Welcome to the Tuesday Reviews Halloween special. Woo! You're listening to the Monster Mash.
The
right.
Tuesday Review
Tuesday
Spooktober Spooktacular.
Yeah.
The Spooktober Spooktacular.
Oh, come on, man. Like, our listeners know every show is scary.
Tuesday Raw Review.
Well, they're scary for different reasons. Yeah, scary for different reasons. But this one's deliberately scary for Spooktober.
Tuesday Reboo.
No, we did the Booze Day review last Halloween. I think that's good. Yeah.
All right, everyone. So,
You're Nathan.
I'm Nathan.
I'm
As
James.
always joined by James and Callum.
Sometimes I'm Callum.
Callum's, yeah. He's alive, barely.
He's here again this week. So it's Halloween. Have we ever done an episode on Halloween directly?
Not on Halloween, because for pretty much our whole thing, it's like we've always like missed Halloween, or like COVID happened, or we had other stuff to review, so we didn't do a Halloween special. And last year, I think, was the first time we did like a Halloween
month.
We did a month, but then we did the special like a few days before, or a day after. Whereas this is the first time when we record is on October 31st,
so
like on the day.
If you are listening live through the radio or tune in, please hit us up on the social media. I know we sent out messages earlier about texting in, but it's not working right now. So you can still contact us through all the social medias at Tuesday Review AU. We would love to hear your thoughts on your favorite horror movie reviews or what we're talking about in the studio.
Definitely.
And because it's Halloween, feel free to try and contact us through Seance, though I don't think that'll work. A Ouija
or
board?
astral projection. Try it, see what happens.
Yeah. All right, so we've got a lot to talk about tonight. I think we'll start.
Should we start with the scariest movie of all time that just came out?
I don't want to talk about The Last Jedi.
Oh, yeah, I was going to make, it wasn't that, it was a similar joke, but it wasn't that joke. Bravo, Callum. You just stole, your joke's better than mine. I was going to say the Taylor Swift movie, the Eras Tour. Ooh.
Yeah.
Nah. Should we start with Scream?
Yeah, let's start with Scream. So James he'd seen the first one.
Yeah.
But
So I'd seen the first Scream, but I had already seen Scary Movie several times before seeing Scream. And Scary Movie, the first one, is basically like a parody of Scream. And Scream itself is a satire. Very meta, almost parody of slasher movies. So by the time I watched Scary Movie, and it's like, it's kind of silly and meta, just not as goofy and silly meta as Scary Movie. I was just kind of like, what is this?
I think Scary Movie ruined the franchise for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did.
Especially because, the Ghostface mask is so iconic and creepy, but then how they treated it in Scary Movie was so funny that it takes away a lot of the bite of it.
Yeah.
And how they, the killer is in that movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when I first watched Scream, I liked it, but I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
I'm like, it's the funny version of the already funny version.
I think it works. I would always say to people, watch Scream if you haven't seen Scary Movie. Because I think that...
Oh, look.
It does. I think... We talked about it with our friend Alum, who, like you, had seen Scary Movie before. And he liked Scream, but I think it does change your perspective of the franchise, because you approach it from this place of, this is the silly guy. If of course he's not so silly. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where the parody almost outdo the original in some way, especially for people of our age.
Was Daniel Craig said that Austin Powers screwed them?
Yeah.
He didn't say screwed, but we're live on the radio, so...
Yeah,
but
it's the same with Scary Movie. Because for Gen X, Scream was huge. But for people of our age, Scary Movie was like...
Yeah, it came out at the perfect age
for us.
For us. But I mean, this is kind of what we want to talk about, is because earlier in the year, Scream 6 came out, and Nathan was a big fan of the Scream movies. He had seen them all. And so he took the boys to see the 6th one, and we talked a bit about it on the show. But I hadn't watched any of the other ones except for the first one. So I didn't want to see the 6th one without catching up first. And I was
that's fair.
And I was like, well...
Especially since 5 and 6 have some recurring characters from throughout the franchise.
They're directly connected, And so I was like, well, this Spooktober, what I'll do, my main goal is to watch all 6 Scream movies, which is what I did. And starting with the first one, obviously, I watched that again. And I liked it a lot more this time. And I appreciated it a lot more. And I was able to just enjoy it as a movie, but also look at it as like, oh, this is Wes Craven operating at peak. Wes Craven.
Yeah.
Especially like Nathan and I were talking about it the other night over dinner. The end, like the climactic sequence is 42 minutes long. It's almost like half the movie, and it's just people running and, you know, people getting killed, and like it's all really yelling, and there's blood everywhere, and it's crazy. And I'm like chef's kiss. Yeah. I'm like, oh, it's so good. And obviously it became such an iconic movie and eventually a franchise that, you know, whatever we say has already been said. But it was just watching the first one again. I was like, oh, seeing this in the theater in 1996
would have been nuts.
Would have been insane.
Especially if you're into films back then. It was kind of one of the first movies to really have like a meta commentary on, like, that kind of commentary within the movie.
Kevin Williamson, who wrote it, like, all, you know, the 80s was like prime slasher sort of, and then by the 90s there was still slasher movies, but it's kind of like boring and
how do you
formulaic.
It? Yeah.
And he deliberately wrote it as to be like a meta commentary on, you know, slasher movies and horror movies and fandom and whatever. And then Wes Craven directed it, who's known for slasher movies and horror movies. So he brings his expertise. It was just the perfect...
I think because at this point, meta's been done to death.
Yeah.
But back then...
That's a good point too. Is like now you can look back on Scream and go, oh, it's meta. Big deal.
Big deal.
I've seen all of Dan Harmon's stuff, you know, whatever. But I'm like, no.
But no, back then, it was a massive deal.
And
like it was...
It kind of not only did it re-kickstart the sort of 90s slasher, but it also kickstarted a sort of meta look at, you know, other movies started to be
100%
like have a sort of more meta look at it. So it's such, and the cast of that movie is so great. And it's a little bit 90s, but that's what's kind of fun about it. And it's like watching any 70s or 80s slasher movie. It's like the style is it's
and also
it's part of the fun.
Also, one of the tracks that kind of runs through, I'm pretty sure every film, maybe not a couple of middle ones, the Nick Cave's Red Right Hand.
It's not in 4, but it's in all the other ones. Yeah,
but that's such a cool kind of horror song.
The soundtrack of the first one is really cool. Not only the soundtrack, but the score as well. I think the newer movies, the soundtrack isn't as cool anymore. I don't know if it's just because, you know, that 90s kind of music they were using now, it sounds really cool, and whatever music they're using for the new movies is kind of like not bad, but it's like whatever.
Yeah.
And the score I don't think is as strong in the new ones. But yeah, the Scream, everything that's been said about it has been said, but it was just great to revisit it and
appreciate it. Yeah.
And I got to watch all the movies in a row. And so that even helped me more enjoy the...
I think that would help as well from the storytelling perspective, because like you can keep up with who the characters are.
Because what's interesting about Scream on the franchise is that it's like character driven. So most slasher movies is like you don't get a lot of recurring characters, or sometimes you do, or, you know, they don't really directly connect. Or sometimes they do, but it's like over the years...
It's like, it's not, you know how we talk about sometimes they'll have a movie, like a random horror movie, and then they'll attach a franchise to it?
Oh, they have a random script.
Yeah. Scream isn't like that.
No.
Like Scream it's a Scream movie, and they write a Scream movie. They don't acquire like a Hellraiser movie, for example, where it'll be like a generic
movie, horror script,
and then they're like, but what if we put the lament configuration?
Yeah. And then Pinhead shows up.
So it's like, but Scream is like, it's a Scream movie with Scream characters, and it's a continuation of that original premise.
Each movie, because the first one is so meta, each movie kind of
can add to the layer.
Continues to comment on, like, the second one, Scream 2. It's like Scream 1 was so successful, they, like, a year later, the second one came out.
And they have the Scream movie in the
and now,
what it's called, Stab.
In the universe of the movie, they have the movie based on the murders that happened in the first movie called Stab, and then now the killings start again, and then there's commentary on sequels and how sequels are never as good, but they have to have a bigger budget and have bigger action scenes, and so it's just like it gets away with a lot that other franchises may not get away with because it's very self-aware,
self-referential,
and again doing it before it was popular.
Yeah, and it's not like ha funny, but there's a sense of humor to the the original trilogy. At least
I'll say it's witty. It has
But there's also an energy, because also it helps that Wes Craven's a really good filmmaker, but like it has this energy to it that I think, even though I like the newer movies like 5 and 6, it's not the same energy. It's not the same sense of humor.
Yeah. Obviously, it's different filmmaking team behind it now than back in the...
Shout out to the Wes Craven cameo in Scream 1 where he's wearing the Nightmare on Elm Street get-up in the high school.
Oh, it was the janitor.
Yeah.
And the principal's like, it's okay, Fred, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. That just reminded me of the cameo of Jay and Silent Bob in the third one. And then that reminded me of the reason they did that is because in in Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, which they were filming assumedly at the same time as Scream 3, when Jay and Silent Bob smash into the Scream set and Wes Craven's there as well. And it's like the killer is revealed to be a monkey. Wes Craven's like, what? People love monkeys. And then and Jay is like, we love this monkey. Wes Craven's like, see? So by the time you get to the third one, it does get even sillier and more over the top. And again, because of the meta aspect, it's kind of like, it's the third movie, all bets are off. They even, and there's all this deconstruction in the movie from characters in the movie saying look, it's the end of the trilogy, crazy stuff is going to happen. So it gets away with a lot of stuff that if you were playing it in a serious way, everyone will roll their eyes. But I think the original trilogy, the thing with Scream movies is they're all good. Yeah. There's no really bad.
No, each movie has something about it that's like most horror franchises and most franchises in general, multiple sequels. It's just they get worse and worse. You might have a good one here or there. Horror specifically is hard to keep to a certain level.
And also anyway, a lot of the time that the sequels get cheaper and cheaper, and the first few are in the
good
movies
old capitalism.
And then straight to
$100
DVD,
million. You made $100 million on a $50,000 movie budget. Make the next one. I want it to make $200 million on a $25,000 budget.
Or it's like, this one didn't do as well as expected, so we're gonna let you do another one, but it's gonna have to be cheap. Or a lot of franchises, especially horror franchises, they just make the movie to keep the rights.
Yeah.
Because if they don't make a movie in a specific time, they
good
lose
old
the rights.
Wheel of Time, am I right?
Yeah.
Billy Zane.
Better than
the superior version. It ended up being.
That's what I was about to say. Louis Theron.
Same with that Fantastic Four Roger Corman movie. It ended up being the best of all the movies.
Anyway,
but Scream has always been a theatrical franchise. It's like every movie has a budget.
I think what helps them get away with doing what they do is that they don't have to rely on a CG monster for their scares.
This is
the great thing about the Westboro killer, Ghostface.
Woodsboro. Yeah.
Sorry, what did I say?
Ghostface.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The good thing about Ghostface is that it's just a guy in a suit, right? And it'll never be more than a person in a suit.
That's I remember we were talking earlier in the year when you guys were talking about Scream 6, and Nathan was, we were talking about they're more murder mystery movies, like whodunits.
It's slasher meets whodunit.
Yeah. So, and that's why not only are they character driven, which makes the ongoing series and returning characters more endearing and interesting and engaging, but also every movie isn't just teens in the woods getting killed off one by one. Or
I remember watching 5 with Alan, and I think Jake was there.
Yeah.
and I'm like, guess who the killer is? And this is the start of the movie. Right
Don't spoil it.
No, I'm not spoiling. No spoilers. No spoilers.
Yeah.
Once the initial group has been sorted at the start,
yeah,
once you see all the initial group, I'm like, guess who it is, Alan?
Yeah.
And he guessed it straight away. I'm like,
Yeah.
I didn't say anything.
I hate to be that one. I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, I always knew the killer. Like, but 5, I did guess it very early on.
Because it also helps if you know the meta aspect of the movies.
That's
kind
true,
of there are clues.
When we went to
within.
see 6, Alan wanted to take bets on it before we went in there.
Of course, he's a gambling addict.
But yeah, they don't have to use CG, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it can be as down to earth as it needs to be.
But that's
so they
what's-
can get away with more practical sets and more practical
It
weapons.
also, I think it also means that every time someone, they make a Scream movie, the whodunit aspect is so important and an integral part of it that you can't just get away with being really I mean, they could be lazy and just,
Yeah, you have to have some forethought.
But yeah, it's like they definitely put effort into each movie of like, who is the killer? There are
Red herrings
there are
and-
several
yeah.
plausible killers. There's more than one killer potentially, whatever. And so every movie, it doesn't. Even though every movie has a lot of the same elements, it's not like other slasher franchises or horror franchises where it's literally the same thing.
There's
every
something to keep
time.
you. There's something to keep you kind of interested,
And
invested.
Also, while you're watching the movie,
you're thinking
your brains,
of that.
you're
exactly.
like, oh, that guy's being
Keeps you
sus.
engaged.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's that guy, and then another guy says something.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, it's definitely that guy.
Yeah, it's good.
So it keeps you engaged in the movie itself, not just in.
Exactly. It's not just like a popcorn kind of horror slasher.
It's not really about the gore.
No, it's about the intellectual games being played on the screen itself, right? Because you got the killer,
and it's
the killer's trying to outwit people,
cat and mouse.
Yeah,
there's the
that whole whodunit,
the integral sort of set pieces, especially of every like opening of every movie is like the phone call. The sort
first
of
kill with the phone call.
the seemingly innocuous caller who ends up saying something
always with the same voice.
Well, that's part of the universe of the
yeah.
movie is like, there's the voice changer, so you don't know who the killer is. They always used Ghostface's voice, which in this universe of the movies is always the same electronic voice, which, I mean, it ends up working really well because Roger L. Jackson, who does the voice, he does the voice for all the movies, even though the killer's different each time. And that's the other thing, is because Ghostface can be anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
So the mask is so iconic.
I think they do it well. They do it well because it's like, obviously, it's like when you have some of these slashers or whodunits, and it's like, and obviously the killer's like a really large dude, it narrows down the thing, but they do a good job in kind of obscuring Ghostface to an extent where
there is a sort of element of suspend your disbelief where like Ghostface is always played by like this one stunt man. And then when the killer's revealed and it's like a 5'4" young woman, and you're like, that doesn't make sense.
But I appreciate it.
Yeah, but they make you believe in the movie that.
No, but I appreciate that because I'd much rather have have a stand-in for the killer
than have it really small.
Than have like a really small ghost face and everyone else be tall and they'd be like, it's the ghost face. Right at the end, they're the small person.
Yeah.
Like, the 5'0" person right there, they're the ghost face, obviously.
Like
because Ghostface is wearing a child's costume. Like, I'd rather much have that stuntman standing in as Ghostface to keep you guessing it can be anyone.
It also, because he's got the voice the same and he's always got the same mask and the thing, even though the killer's different each time, Ghostface himself, even though he doesn't exist, is always the killer in the movie. And so you get your main horror slasher villain, but also you get to vary it up each time.
And I mean, but
so
Ghostface,
it's not boring because there's only one Freddy Krueger, there's only one Michael Myers, there's only one Jason Voorhees. And it gets boring.
Well, there's more than one Michael Myers at this point.
Well, same with Jason Voorhees, but it's always the same
character,
look. Yeah, it's like it's technically the same killer.
Ghostface is interesting too because his motivations can be different, right, depending on the movie.
Yeah.
But also, like, the character generally has a same kind of wit, like with the, what are your favorite scary movie? He has that kind of movie affinity.
It's
Ghostface
also,
himself as a killer has character.
It's part of the universe as well. As after the first killings, is like everyone was like copycatting, and then when they weren't copycatting real killings, they were copycatting the movies, the stab movies in universe.
Yeah.
And so it makes quote unquote sense that everyone is doing the same Ghostface.
Yeah.
Although I will say that there are 6 movies now. I would like I wouldn't mind seeing some variation.
Well, we'll talk about that maybe later.
Yeah. We won't spoil anything.
No spoil. But you had ideas.
Yeah. Well, we're up to the third movie, I guess. So we talked a bit about that. That's where it gets a bit silly and whatever. But it kind of rounds out the trilogy nicely enough. And then that came out in like 2000. So it was like 96, 97, and then 2000 was the third one. And then they didn't make another one until 2011. And I remember when this came out, Scream 4, and I remember it was a big deal because it was like Wes Craven returning, you know, characters were returning, you know, it was a big franchise, and it was a big deal. And I didn't see it because I'd only seen the first one. I was like, I'm not caught up. Maybe I'll see it another time. But I remember it being, you know, people talking about how it's a meta commentary on reboots. And this was back in 2011 before things got really bad.
Out of hand.
Yeah. So you can imagine like watching it now. So I watch Scream 4 now and there's all this commentary about reboots and sequels and franchises and there's all this stuff that's, I guess, a little ahead of its time with like social media. They name dropped Facebook and Twitter, which were kind of newish at the time. Most of the characters have like older phones, but camera phones were a thing.
Yeah.
You see a couple characters have like the new iPhone, which just came out a couple years before. But yeah, watching it now, it's interesting like that they're already having that, like the killers want to be social media famous and vlogging is a thing. And there's like that aspect to it, which is
ahead
cool.
of its time. Yeah.
I think personally, from what I understand, the original trilogy, the third one is the black sheep, and that I would agree with that. It's not bad, but it is the weakest. It's law of diminishing returns. 1 is the best, 2's good, but not as good, and then 3's not as good. But they're all worth watching.
Yeah.
4, from what I understand, I might be wrong, is just as much a black sheep as 3. Some people really didn't like it. It didn't do well at the box office, apparently.
That's why we didn't have another movie for like 10 years. Yeah.
And personally, watching them all in a row, 1, 2, 3, 4, I like 4 more than 3. I think 2 might have been just more enjoyable, but I think I really liked 4. I liked the new characters. I like that, the social media aspect. Even though the filmmaking's a bit different and Wes Craven's changed and the movie landscape has changed by 2011. I think it's just more an interesting movie than 3.
Yeah.
So I liked it more than 3. And then, they were going to make 5, but it didn't do well enough and like they couldn't really get anything off the ground. And then in 2015, there was a TV series.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, which everyone forgets about because it was like on MTV or something. And
did it get moved?
I think it started on MTV and then went somewhere else.
Did you watch it?
No.
I didn't watch it either.
But
is it canon?
No. So
okay,
the thing with the TV series is that it's about, so the first 2 seasons are about a different killer, not Ghostface. He's got a different kind of mask. And so automatically people hated it because of that. But I think that's not a terrible thing to have a Scream series where it's not Ghostface, but it's still like a murder mystery. Apparently, the second season was better than the first season. I don't know. And then they sort of rebooted it with the third season with a new cast and they brought Ghostface in. But by that point, no one really
Damage
cared.
was done.
Yeah. And then it got cancelled after that. And because it's not connected to the movies in any real way, like there's no recurring characters from the movies or whatever, it's sort of just kind of forgotten. I've heard it's not awful, but yeah.
I like the mask.
Yeah, the redesign of the mask in the first couple of seasons is pretty cool. But I think, and I remember when the TV show came out in 2015 and Wes Craven had just passed away. And I remember feeling dirty about it, even though in hindsight, they would have been producing that television show for a while before he passed.
Well, he was a producer on it.
In name only. It was just kind of like an honorary, like he had no real involvement with it, which again leaves a little bit of bitter taste in your mouth when the director of all 4 movies is, and even Kevin Williamson, who wrote 1, 2, and 4, the other reason he didn't do 3 is because he was like directing his own movie or whatever at the same time. You do feel a bit like, a Scream series, and they're like getting rid of the original filmmakers.
It's becoming what it was mocking.
Yeah, and it's like, but like I said, I haven't seen it, and I heard it's not terrible, but it's kind of forgotten in the Scream lore, and it's not directly connected to.
If
the
it's
movie,
not canon,
then in 2022 they did Scream 5, which is just called Scream, which they make fun of in the movie because that's exactly what all these horror franchises and movie franchises do.
That was done on purpose.
Yeah, it's like the Halloween 2018 version. It's just called Halloween. So, and that movie did really well. It did so well that they did the same thing they did when the first movie came out in the 90s, where they rushed the second one into production. And so, whereas the first movie came out in 96 and then the second one came out in 97, the new reboot came out in 22, and then the new Scream 6 came out in 2023.
I think the new Scream 5, or we'll say the new films, right? Because there's obviously like a
5 and 6 are like
5 and 6 like a. They talk about this in the film. They're like the rebootquels.
Yeah, they're very self-aware, which is part of the franchise.
I'm glad they took that break, because then they can come back fresh. A lot of years later, coming back into a landscape where the film industry, the movie industry, it's all streaming, everything's changed, and they're in a better position now to kind of reflect on that as well.
It's like, because, I was saying like 4 is really interesting watching it now in hindsight, and it's already about sort of reboots and sequels, but
they had no idea.
But they had no idea. And now the 2022 version, which we'll call Scream 5 for clarity, it's very like doubles down on like the reboot cool, or the requel as they call it in the movie. The Force Awakens and all that. It's like you have to have legacy characters, but you also have to have new characters, and you have to do nostalgia stuff, but you also and it's a sequel, but it's a soft reboot. And so this movie, again, like the other sequels, it gets away with a lot that it couldn't if it wasn't so self-aware and tongue-in-cheek.
Because I think the charm of Scream is that, yes, it uses a lot of these tropes that are way overdone, but it does that knowing that it's doing that, and it's kind of winking at the audience in that way that it can get away with a lot of these things, because it's like, look how funny this is, look how silly this is.
And that's like, look, we've probably even talked about movies where it's like, just because you're being meta and self-aware or funny about something doesn't mean you can just get a...
No, but Scream
you get away with it.
But the writing is good enough that it can...
But I think all the Scream movies is just like, they're good enough to where you forgive when they're doing something that they know is stupid and you know is stupid, but it's like, okay, they're aware of it and it's funny and whatever.
But as we said, they're character-driven movies. They're whodunits. They have enough other kind of...
I think it's also...
strengths to sort of
rely
push
on.
Through.
And the filmmaking is generally good enough to and the slasher aspects are generally good enough. But I think, like I was saying earlier, it is at a point now where just because the series and the fans expect you to have a exposition dump from a character who explains the rules of slasher movies, at this point, doesn't need to have it. It's kind of expected.
I think I would have felt
it's part
obligated,
of the franchise.
If I was the filmmaker of 5, I would have felt obligated to do it in 5.
Yeah, but then I think do they do it in 6 again? I think they do it in every movie. And it's like,
do it in 6?
I'm sure they do. Yeah, they do at the college where Mindy's character is like standing up and they're all sitting in front of the kind of trees at the college, and she's explaining the rules. Again, like it's like you expect it, and it's like in every Scream movie. And if it wasn't there, fans would get angry. But also the fact that it's there is like, do we need this still? No. Like, is this still part of?
Yeah,
it's a hard question to answer.
I guess.
But 5, I enjoyed 5. I think the new movies 5 and 6 are the ones like Nathan is like, he was like, you have to see these ones. And I liked 5, but I didn't love it. I think it definitely, like we were just saying, it commits the sin of being a Force Awakens-esque reboot where it's like a soft remake of the first movie, but then some sequel elements, and then legacy characters coming in and then handing the torch to younger, newer characters. And so it's kind of boring in that way, but because it's self-aware and it's meta and that's part of Scream, you're kind of like, okay, I understand it. And what it does do is it resets the Scream franchise without resetting the timeline or setting a new continuity, but then letting it go on to Scream 6, which then becomes its own sort of with the new characters and assumedly the 7th one and so on.
I think Scream 6 is definitely... It's a step up in almost every way of Scream 5.
Yeah, for me, Scream 6 was so much better than 5 just because all the set pieces are really strong.
They're fresh. They're not in Woodsboro. They're in New York City. And they use that to their strengths. Everything's bigger, bolder.
New rules apply.
It's that kind of that sequel thing you were saying. It's like, let's do a new movie, but it has more, bigger set pieces, more explosions, blah, blah, blah,
But it's also like the first...
But it actually pulls that off.
Yeah. The original movie, the 96 one, is like especially that climactic kind of sequence is so strong. And even though Scream 5 is like riffing on that or rebooting that or copying that a lot, remaking elements of that, none of the action slasher sequences, horror sequences, kill sequences are as strong as in the previous movies. Whereas the whodunit aspect is fine. Whereas 6, they move to New York, so it's automatically just a better different location to play with, and the set pieces are all really fantastic.
Yeah, that scene in the little shop is awesome.
Yeah, the bodega shootout kind of scene is awesome.
That's a very important scene because it's kind of just like, Ghostface has only really been stabbing people with a knife, this whatever.
Well, but
it's like new city, new rules. And like
but it's also like
whatever he'll use whatever he's got.
One of the things we were just talking about is Ghostface isn't a monster or whatever. It's like if Freddy Krueger started using a gun, or Jason Voorhees started using a gun, or Michael Myers, you'd be like, "What the hell?"
I'd laugh if Michael Myers used a gun.
That would be kind of funny.
From the top of a bell tower.
He's just walking with a suitcase. He's slowly walking up the stairwell, and he gets to the top, opens the suitcase, got the broken down rifle, and he starts. That would be funny. But you know what I mean? Like, it feels more of a betrayal in those movies.
Yeah,
whereas Ghostface is just a serial killer. Like, he's just a murderer. So it makes sense for him to use any weapon, really. I think
it was big because, like, he hasn't done that on screen before. You haven't seen him do that kind of thing,
The Ghostfaces have used, like, pistols before.
In such a blatant kind of...
But, not in that kind of,
Because, like, he just gets a shotgun, he kills a guy in the shop, and
he's like massacring everyone in there so he can get to the main characters who's
like
chasing.
That's kind of that drive is a bit different.
And I like that because, it doesn't make sense that a
very good tense scene.
Yeah. And, the copycat nature of it, and like we were just saying, is like Ghostface is always Ghostface, even though he's a different guy each time. I guess you still want to say, he's copycat, so he's got the knife and the mask.
I remember watching, when me and James watched this over the weekend, I also remember, like, that's a very good, it starts really well. And even the start threw James off just a little bit in number 6. Yeah. Because you think it's going to be one way.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of early twist.
Yeah.
Without revealing anything.
Yeah, like watching all 5 movies, I was like, there are a few things I want to see from movies going forward. And Scream 6 does pretty much all of them in the one movie. Not to the extent that I would like, but it
does things differently enough that...
And I'm hoping that 7 will be a bit more...
Unfortunately, I think we're going to be waiting a while.
Yeah.
They reckon, towards the end of 2024 or early 2025 for the next Scream.
Yeah, and also one of my big problems with the next movie is that when Scream 5 came out, Jenna Ortega wasn't Jenna Ortega yet. It was still... And then 6 comes out, and now she's blown up.
She's one of the biggest actresses in the world now.
So I'm assuming by the time the 7th one comes out, she's going to have a reduced role, which I think is a shame because she's like one of the better characters.
Or just expand her role and pay her more money.
Well, yeah, but it's like scheduling conflicts and stuff. She's like, she probably won't be available when it's not necessarily about
true. Is it going to be the
money.
movie they envisioned?
Yeah. So, but they could do a thing of like if she's 97 and the series keeps going and then she comes because Neve Campbell, the original actress from the first movie, is like
back,
returned for most of the movies. Gail and Dewey are in most of the movies, so it's like even though she has a reduced role in one, as long as they don't kill her off, she can always come back later. Especially, look, on one hand, you don't want them to churn these out every year, so I think it's
good. Yeah,
it's good that there'll be a couple years gap, and then we'll see what happens with the 7th one. But it's like after the 7th one, I would be happy for them to wait 5 years. And then
Scream is like an evergreen series where there should be a gap between kind of a trilogy or so.
But I think as long as it makes money, if 7 if 7 does well, then they'll just.
The good thing about a gap is it can also reflect the zeitgeist.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I'm like, if you have that gap, it gives the series a chance to be fresh again later in the future when the world looks a little different.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do with like meta commentary on horror movies and social media and whatever. It's just like, okay, we get it.
As long as they release like summer camp slashes in between Scream movies, I'm happy.
Oh, there's always horror movies coming
lots
out.
Of them.
Man, I'm just waiting for someone to wear like a Donald Trump mask and like have like a MAGA, like the MAGA killer. Like have a reflection on
that's disgusting. But also, should we make that?
Have you not heard of January 6th? That already happened.
No, I'm talking about like a serial killer who has that kind of like a Donald Trump like personality.
What's the Daily Wire? They started making movies now.
Yeah, they would make it for the wrong reasons.
Oh yeah, that would make him like the good guy. They would misunderstand the stuff. They're the people who think Ghostface is the good guy.
Yeah,
I don't see what the big deal is.
If they listened to the rules, they would have been fine. This is all about law enforcement, guys. If you listen to the rules, Ghostface doesn't kill you if you get the questions right.
Oh, God. I hate the world we live in. But yeah, 6 was awesome. There's so many great set pieces. The subway sequence,
tense.
The ladder sequence, and like the big
the apartment sequence.
The big climactic sequence at the theater, and there's recurring characters and it's a lot of fun. So yeah, now I'm caught up with the series, so when the next one does come out,
it's gonna be fun.
It'll be good because all the boys can go together.
I love going to see these Scream movies at the theater for the whodunit aspect. I'm like, it's always fun for me, these movies.
I think
it's definitely going to be that kind of who is the killer. You're watching it fresh. It hasn't been spoiled on the internet. Watching it for the first time. For me, these movies are magic.
I'm actually pretty lucky because even though, most of the Scream movies have been out for more than 20 years, I don't think I ever really got spoiled. So,
I think the types of people who are fans of the Scream franchise are also probably the type of people to keep that information private. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I guess it's... Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so...
But overall...
It was really, really, really fun to watch all these movies. I'm a big fan of the franchise now. Like we said, like Ghostface is such an iconic...
And horror's hard to do well.
Yeah.
Just in general, horror slasher, I mean, they're kind of difficult to do well.
There's
I know
there's
you can
so
make
many
them
of
cheaply,
them.
And there's so many of them. But to pull it off and make it actually a good movie,
great slasher movies, there aren't as many as there is bad ones.
Yeah.
And especially when the first one in the franchise was such a big iconic movie and sort of changed the genre as well as being a commentary on the past of the genre. It's kind of cool to see that the ongoing movies and franchise has kept up the quality to a certain extent.
Yeah.
It hasn't gone downhill like most other franchises or most most horror sequels. And also, like, we were talking early in the year when the 6th one came out, and we were like, what other horror movies or franchises in general have the same continuity over 25 years with the same recurring characters?
And still maintain some semblance of quality.
And because I'm a dum-dum and my brain's gone to mush, I completely forgot about the Chucky series.
Chucky, yeah.
Which I had talked about last Spooktober because I watched all those movies for the first time, and the TV series, which is all set in the same continuity with the same recurring characters.
I started watching the Chucky films, but there's just so much of it that I just got demoralized. I'm like, I haven't got the time. time.
See,
You got to stick with it, man.
You got to have the stack, like I do.
Yeah.
The stack never changes.
No,
you know what
you watch one at a time until the stack
But
is
the problem
gone.
is Chucky is like, what, 7 movies and then 3 seasons?
Yeah, the 3rd season's airing now, so yeah. But like, take it slowly. Like, don't like, because I put in, you know, this year with Spooktober, I was busy, so it's like I didn't get to watch as many horror movies as I wanted to. But like the last weekend leading up to Halloween today, I was just like cramming in watching like 4 horror movies a day, and that gets a bit much.
Yeah.
But you've got the next
the whole 12
watch
months,
one every couple of weeks, and then start watching the show slowly.
Got to get on my level, one after the other until it's done. Not
But not in the
endlessly.
same series. You're not watching the same series, series of movies.
Yeah.
What are you watching at the moment?
Oh no! What I mean is, when I start watching the Chucky movies, I watch.
Oh, you're gonna watch. But you're gonna watch one a day.
2 a day, depending if I'm playing games or not. You know what I mean? Like after work, pop them in.
As long as you don't get sick of it.
But Cal's a machine.
Personally, I didn't. Personally, I didn't get sick of them because I was enjoying them so much.
Even if I get sick of them, gotta watch it so I can remove it from the stack.
But see, then don't you lose enjoyment that way? Because
look, sometimes yes, but then you get that sense of achievement when it's over with, number one. But then also sometimes there'll be movies in the stack that you don't want to watch, but then you'll watch them to find it really rewarding. You know what I mean? So
that's true.
Something that you might not be.
Sometimes when you're not in the mood for something and you're just like, I just got to watch this, get out of the way, and you end up really enjoying
Minari
it.
and St. Vincent were surprises for Callum.
Oh, the St. Vincent,
so I didn't want to watch. I didn't want to watch that.
One. Yeah, that's a good movie.
I didn't want to watch St. Vincent at all.
And I'm like, just watch it.
So I watched it, and then I was deeply moved.
Yeah,
I mean, Minari I wanted to watch because it's like
that movie. I'm gonna watch that next week.
It was Callum bait all over it.
Yeah,
but my point is sometimes the stack can be punishing but rewarding. And that's how you got to treat the Chucky movies, punishing but rewarding.
Yeah, but I think Nathan also, like, he gets to a point with a lot of shows and movies where he's, like, putting the effort in and he ODs and then he stops. Whereas I think you need to take it, you need to pace yourself.
I need to slow it down.
Callum's a junkie, he can take it. Yeah. He's an experienced smack addict.
Stack addict.
Nathan, you need to take it easy. Pace yourself.
I'll pace myself.
But what I was saying earlier... just about the Ghostface mask being really iconic, even though I hadn't seen the movies or just the first one or whatever, or even as a kid when I hadn't seen any of the movies, everyone knew that mask, everyone knew what it was from, and then obviously the Scary Movie parody of it eclipsed it, and it became even more, but it was in every $2 shop, every costume store. You saw that saw that mask everywhere.
The licensing must have gone nuts.
Yeah, so like for them to choose that mask, which is already a mask, the existing mask, like Halloween mask, before Wes Craven chose it. Like they didn't make it.
It wasn't made for the movie.
Yeah. So, but that just catapulted it to be like the most iconic, most readily available sort of Halloween costume mask ever. And when I was little, it used to scare the hell out of me.
Of course, yeah.
Every time,
such a weirdly shaped face.
Yeah. It's just, and now obviously I'm older and I've seen all the movies, and it's like not as impactful. But it is a great design.
You'll sit in your empty new home with your ghost face mask on, being like, heh.
Scare all the kids to come to the door. But actually, speaking of kids, when I was driving here,
just
I saw
stand by the window.
Yeah, I'll get a cardboard cutout on a mannequin, put the ghost face.
Well, there used to be a house in our area that used to have like a Borat cutout and just in the window.
That's funny.
Just like looking out the window in a mankini.
Was this Home Alone with a Michael Jordan pretending to be home, but it's a Borat in a mankini? Not in this home, go away. There was like 4 kids all dressed in black, all wearing the ghost face mask, trick-or-treating. And then there was, when I got closer to the radio station, there was another little boy in the ghost face costume and mask. And he's like holding his little sister's hand, and she was like a fairy or something. So, that was, but it's like, even those kids who have probably never heard of Scream.
They don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's just like, that's the mask.
It's in the DNA.
Yeah.
It's in the culture.
It's such a big... Yeah. But that's also... I think we talked about this once, where sometimes something can get so big that in a lot of people's mind,
it's bigger than it's
bigger than
IP,
itself, but
yeah.
also in a lot of people's minds, it's like, oh, I don't have to watch Scream because I know that it's an iconic franchise with The Mask.
Yeah.
But it's like, you need to go back and see.
Yeah.
You have to watch the actual source material
to appreciate it fully. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the first one's still the best for me personally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the time,
Look, I remember,
but
people,
even now,
people got shocked when spoilers for Scream.
Just be very vague, because we're all talking about like people should watch it if they haven't.
Yeah, that one big celebrity that was going to be in the movie, and then that big celebrity's in the movie for the opening sequence. And
well, they did that with Jenna Ortega in the 5th movie, where it's like
it is that's making me laugh.
But they swapped it,
And the fact is, they put a certain person's face on the movie poster.
Yeah,
yeah. And
but it's a great gimmick.
Seeing the movie and then, oh my god, what happened?
Yeah. But that's why, if seeing it in 1996 before all the meta stuff had come out, it'd be like seeing Blair Witch before all the other found footage movies came out. Yeah. Seeing Blair Witch now, you're like, what's the big deal?
I think that's
still scary, man.
It is. I still think it's scary.
That movie scared the shit out of me.
You know what?
I saw it after all the explosion of found footage, and I was like, it's still scary.
There are 2 types of people in the world: people who think Blair Witch is scary, and liars.
Yeah. People who are like, actually, it's not scary.
No, they're wrong. That end sequence, chilling.
Yeah, that's got to be one of the best end
I saw the Blair Witch. I don't know. I must have been over 15.
Yeah,
but it still scared the crap out of me.
It sticks with you.
It would scare me now as a grown-ass man.
Yeah.
We'll go to a very quick break, and we'll be back with more of our favourite horror films. You still have 9 minutes for live listeners to hit us up.
Yeah, hit us up on the social media.
We'll be back right after this.
Call us with your ghost face.
Yeah, call us with your voice modulator, please. It'll make
What's that?
We'll be back right after this. You are back on the Tuesday review for a Halloween Spooktacular. We've just been discussing the Scream movies, which you should go out and watch right now. Pause this episode. Oh, if you
finish the whole episode and then
finish the whole episode and
no
go watch it.
spoilers.
No spoilers, of course. Moving on, one movie I want to talk about, I think we've all watched recently, is the Mothman Prophecies.
Yeah.
I was going to bring my I Support Mothman pin, but I had nowhere to pin it.
You can pin on your jacket, on your
maybe.
jumper.
I don't want to ruin the hoodie. Anyway.
Yeah, recently got re-released by
a couple
Imprint,
years ago.
So,
which is an Australian. It was re-released by an Australian company.
So I've seen Mothman Prophecies several times before. It's a great movie. But for a long time it was only available on DVD.
Yeah,
and
we've all got that at home.
I've all got that, and we've all rewatched that multiple times. Then I want to say 10 years ago, I'm not sure exactly, it was a while ago, they did release a Blu-ray in Australia, but if you didn't buy it straight away, it sold out and it disappeared. You can't even find second-hand copies on eBay. Yeah. And if you could, I'm assuming they would have been expensive because of how rare they are. And for years and again 10 years ago there was like a German release Blu-ray, but unfortunately it had German subtitles
hard-coded.
Hard-coded, burned into the picture. So that was a no-go. So for years I've been on the lookout for this Australian Blu-ray, and it's like I want a HD copy of this movie. It's so good. And then recently, I think we've talked about them before, the Australian company Imprint have been like releasing all these great movies that have never gotten, a lot of which have never gotten Blu-ray releases before.
Are they all region free as well?
I think so.
I think they are.
Yeah,
because I know there's YouTubers I follow in America that really love Imprint because
there a lot of people are getting them overseas, which is crazy because being a physical media collector in Australia, usually I'm like, nothing comes out, you have to import everything, and now people are importing stuff to America. I'm like, what the? And there's all this great stuff coming out. Anyway, they're doing really good work.
We love Imprint.
They're releasing all these great movies with like slip covers and lots of special features and
movies that you wouldn't expect, it's kind of varied.
There's a good spread of like
classics,
older to newer movies and like all genres and all types. It's awesome.
The Mothman Prophecies got okay reception when it was released, but it kind of became a cult movie, like you said, because it wasn't available very much. Like it was on streaming. But I don't know if it ever got a good HD release.
I don't even remember it being on streaming. At least not in Australia, because we don't get anything.
But then it gets released.
Yeah, then
I
a
think-
year or two ago, got imprint released it on Blu-ray.
I think I told this story on the. I'm not sure if I've told
I
this
think
story on
last
the
week
show.
you told it, yeah.
But I was like, no, it's out today.
Yeah. And-
Arguing with poor JB Hi-Fi
Yeah.
employees.
Yeah.
No, I know it's coming out today.
I pre-ordered that so fast.
Yeah.
And
But-
it looks gorgeous.
Yeah, and so for like the last year or however long it's been out, it's just been sitting on my shelf, and I've been trying to figure out a time to watch it. I want my sister to watch it because she's never seen it before, and she likes horror movies. It's not a straight horror movie.
You're
It's
gonna
a
get it,
strange
but
movie.
also it's a good
high
entry.
strangeness
Yeah,
movie.
It's a good entry into the UFO community to an extent.
In
Oh,
a soft,
no.
it's very soft.
One of the dialogue from Leak, which is of course Keel backwards,
Yeah.
is one of the greatest simple explanations of the phenomenon I've ever heard.
watching Mothman again is like watching one of the best episodes of the X-Files, except
Yeah.
it's a movie.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah.
I think it does have connections to the UFO community, like with people like John Keel who wrote the book.
Yeah,
that
but
it's sort
the
of
movie
based on.
itself,
The movie- it's
they mention
standalone,
UFOs once, and then the rest of it's just like a supernatural mystery.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, strange phenomena kind of movie. Yeah.
But anyway, I was trying to get my sister to watch it, and she's always like, no. So anyway, this Spooktober, watching horror movies, Nathan's like, oh, I'm going to watch Mothman this year, and I'm like, done. And I went home and I put it in, and I was like, rubbing my hands like, yes. As soon as it started, I'm like, this movie rules. It's so good.
And did your sister watch it?
No, she didn't.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
well,
she's
that's
a lost cause.
Her loss.
I've
Yeah,
stopped trying to get. Actually, in general, I've stopped trying to get other people to watch movies, because even though on this show we always say, "Watch this movie, it's so great, you should watch this movie." The amount of effort you put into trying to get, and then they never do it, or they do watch it and they're like, "I don't get it." It's like
You can show
Yeah.
you can show a person Richard Gere, but you can't make them love him.
you can lead a man to Richard Gere, but you can't make him drink.
That's right.
I don't know if that works.
But I'm a Gere simp. I love the man. I think he's fantastic. You know,
Yeah.
he has such a presence.
Yeah,
He has charisma and intensity.
He has the Riz.
The Riz. That's
Yeah.
right. He has the Riz.
more like Riz.
Unlike
Riz-
Laura, is that Laura Dern? Or Laura,
no,
Laura
it's
Linney.
Laura Linney.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was one of the Lauras.
Yeah. And
She's great in it too.
Will Patton, he's so
Yeah,
good in this movie.
yeah.
I mean, he's good in every movie, but he's
Yeah.
so good in this movie.
Um,
But yeah, it's so. Was it published in the 60s or the 70s? The book.
70s, I think. Let me double check. But you know what? I said to Nathan the other day, it's so nice that we live in a world where it's on Blu-ray in Australia, and
Yeah.
and we can just watch it now. You know, to me that blows my mind.
Well, yeah, every time you wait, like there's so many movies that I'm always waiting for it to come out that have never come out on Blu-ray, and I'm just like, this is never going to come out. And then when it does come out, it's like, for someone like me, it's the best feeling in the world.
It's Christmas.
75.
Yeah, so John Keel wrote a book released in 1975 called The Mothman Prophecies, which is technically a non-fiction book
Yeah.
about like several supernatural occurrences around the world, but sort of focusing in on Point Pleasant,
Yeah.
Virginia in the 1960s, where there were several sightings of a creature known as the Mothman,
Yeah.
who had like bright red eyes and wings and would sort of fly around. People would see it, and then like certain things and
Bad
all
things
sorts
would happen,
all
yeah.
sorts of things. And there's connections to UFOs and
Yeah.
Men in Black, both the government agents who investigate these kind of things, and also the aliens or suspected,
Yeah.
non-humans
Pretend to be
who-
agents.
who are
agents,
also
yeah.
known as Men in Black
Yeah.
because they wear black suits, but they're just like, they're human, but there's something there's something off about
Yeah.
it. Anyway, so this book is like a catalogue of all these occurrences, mainly in the 60s.
Yeah. What's so interesting is that it's such a difficult movie to adapt to, a
No,
book
but
to adapt.
that's what I like about the movie. It's just not really an adaptation.
Yeah.
It's they took the general idea
Yeah.
of the Point Pleasant
'Cause there was-
bridge disaster
Yeah. There's a few
and the
stories.
sightings of the Mothman, and then they made a like drama
Yeah.
about it or
There's
a
a
mystery.
few stories in the book that they kind of lean on.
Hmm.
But it's a really interesting book if you haven't read it, listeners, because it's, like James said, it's part of a recollection of stories about Point Pleasant.
Yeah.
Things that happened in a very journalistic way, because he was, I believe, a journalist.
I think so.
But it's also like an exegesis on Keel's ideas about the phenomenon in 1975 when it was published.
Yeah.
Because he was a Fortean, in quotation marks, after Charles Fort, who was like the OG guy sitting at home thinking, what's that weird stuff going on? Not just UFOs, all kinds of stuff. Like a paranormal philosopher, basically.
Yeah.
And then, Keel released a book after the Mothman Prophecies, a sequel called The Eighth Tower, which is less stories about Point Pleasant and more just, him just sitting and brainstorming. What does it all mean?
Yeah.
But to take such an abstract kind of a difficult book, I guess, because you can't just go to some guy and be like, yeah, check this book out. Because it's, it can be challenging for someone who's not interested in the material.
It doesn't have a normal plot that you could turn into a movie. It's just, like I said, they took the main idea and then they turned it into this movie
drama,
with Richard Gere, whose character, his wife dies in a car accident. And then he starts seeing, people start seeing the Mothman, and it's like somehow he might be connected to his wife. He
ends up in Point Pleasant because I don't know how.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know how I got here. He loses time. There are like strange occurrences.
Yeah, but the fact that they condense the essence of the book, if you will, the not literally speaking, but like the vibes of the book into a film, it's pretty well done. And I'm a hater of source material adaptations. Most of the time.
Yeah.
But, Richard Gere,
Yeah, and the movie is it's one of those kind of slower, quieter movies that they don't really make anymore. It looks really cool. It sounds really cool. The
it has the
really cool.
discovery stuff that we like,
like
that
the slow
investigation, and then there's the looking at the waveforms and the trying to figure things out.
Looking through old files and photos and all sorts. Yeah, it's a great movie. And the end set piece on the bridge is one of the great sort of practical effects sequences that needs to get more love.
Yeah, go watch the Mothman Prophecies. We like it.
Great movie.
So the other movie I wanted to talk about was the Boogeyman.
Oh, you watched? Yeah, I watched the Boogeyman as well.
I wasn't a fan.
It was okay.
Yeah, it was okay. I think it's a movie which uses the idea, I guess, of trauma and kind of, I guess
grief.
It's in grief, and it's kind of the movie that gets your kids. It's like the demon that gets your kids when you're not paying attention, or whatever the kind of other messages are. I think it uses the same kind of ideas as another movie called Lights Out. Have you seen Lights Out?
Yes.
That's a much better
It's very
movie.
similar, yeah. I think, but there are a lot of horror movies. The thing with the Boogeyman is that it is kind of derivative. There are a lot of other horror movies about grief and loss and how the monster feeds on fear and whatever.
Like, it kind of plays with light. It needs to be in the dark. And I'm like, Lights Out is just a much better movie.
Yeah. I think Lights Out probably is a much lower budget. I remember Lights Out being very kind of stripped back. But Lights Out is more about the light aspect, and so they play with that more. Yeah. Whereas this movie is just like, as long as you keep your flashlight on, like it'll stay away or whatever. And so it's not as much about the light aspect.
Look, I was a bit disappointed. As you said, it's very derivative, and if it's a story by Stephen King, I would have expected something a bit stronger.
No, so the movie came out earlier this year, and I remember seeing the trailer, and I was like, for a movie called The Boogeyman, it doesn't look awful. Because you'd expect something called The Boogeyman to be just bottom of the barrel, like straight to DVD garbage.
See it on Tubi.
Yeah, you'd think it'd be a Tubi movie. But this had some...
We've reviewed some very good movies that have been on Tubi.
Oh, no.
But you know.
It's a grab bag, like the old OG Amazon Prime.
Yeah,
it's a
like
grab bag,
I'm talking about like Poultrygeist or something like just so, trashy, low budget.
Poultrygeist, is that like a haunted
That's a
chicken?
real thing, yeah.
You mean like those Bong movies?
Yeah, the haunted Bong movies. So there's 7 of them, 8 of them, or 9 of them, whatever. But you'd think, it's the Boogeyman. But it's like, you can see they've got a bit of a budget, and it's like, it looked kind of nice. And we're like, maybe if we have time, we'll see it, because we all like seeing horror movies, but we didn't have time to see it. But now it's on Disney Plus, which is cool. So, yeah, I think it looked nice enough, sounded nice enough. Again, it has that problem with a lot of modern movies that we always complain about, where it's too dark in some scenes, and it's just like, it's not scary because it's so dark you can't even see what's going on or where people are or where you are in the space. And they need to, like, we always talk about how older movies are better, how you can it's dark, but you can
Yeah.
You know what's going on. You can see what's going on.
I think that they would have had a good opportunity if they'd have played with that element of it. It's like you can kind of see it in the dark, maybe a little bit of practical. It's dark.
This is my biggest problem with the movie, which anyone who listened to more than one episode in this show knows. I hate CGI, and this movie would have been so much better if it was exactly the same, but the monster was practical and not CGI garbage.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there are a couple moments in this movie where it looks like PS2 graphics. It's
the
bad.
the CG is rough.
And I'm just like the opening scene with the baby. I was like, oh, this is really nice. And then the CGI hand comes. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And then the movie, the rest of the movie is fine. I like the actors in it. Sophie Thatcher from Yellow Jackets is in it. David Desmalkian, our boy David Desmalkian's in it.
Not for long enough.
Spoiler alert.
No, I didn't say what happens to him.
He goes on a long trip with his family and has a great time. But we don't see him much in the movie
That's
after
it.
that.
He just leaves.
Yeah. Also, major points for the little girl, like eating a bowl of shredded cheese. That was hilarious.
Yeah.
That was my favorite part of the movie. But yeah, overall,
the little girl does well.
She's good. Yeah.
Good actress.
I liked her moon nightlight.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's a ball so she can roll it into dark places.
Also,
I like that.
Also a little picky there. If she's already scared of something under the bed, why would she
There's
pick...
no way she would
There's no way she would have picked under the bed and
Yeah.
then roll a nightlight down to see if the demon is going to get her or not.
And then it's crappy CGI face that isn't scary, yeah. I did like, at the end, the design of the monster with the hands, but I didn't like the
execution.
The execution with this digital
Yeah,
effect.
the CG was particularly...
Yeah. I like that she's got the Christmas lights on it. Like, there are moments of the movie that I enjoyed. But, yeah, it's based on a Stephen King short story, but I think the short story is, like, only a few pages, and basically they just made up the rest of the movie.
That
and
would
it's
make
just
a lot of
basic...
sense, because...
Oh, the Hobbit treatment.
Yeah, I think...
Not really, because the Hobbit was a fool, yeah.
I think that... Because it feels like they've taken what we talked about before a little bit. You take a generic horror movie and they've just kind of put some Stephen King in.
It's not that. It's just they took his general idea, used his name to sell the movie, but then just stretched that idea out for 90 minutes. It's not awful or anything.
It's not an awful movie, but if
it's just
I've seen it a million times.
Yeah. If you've seen most kind of supernatural monster horror movies, you've seen this one.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's not worth watching at all, but yeah, it's nothing particularly new. I do think that, yeah, I mean, the practical element, like I said, they need to work on that, and the sort of digital cinematography, darkness aspect, they have to work on that. But also, I feel like I've seen, the monster who preys on fear, and that even Stephen King has done that before. It's like part of his, and they didn't do anything new with it. And also the fact that the monster ends up just being a monster.
I think if you're playing with the whole kind of fear element of it, go watch Smile instead. Because
Smile's a more fun, crazy,
but that's
movie.
also a monster that kind of feeds on
trauma
and fear.
Yeah, you could also go watch the OG It.
But that's what I'm saying. It's a Stephen King thing. He did that. I think it was a book, and then they made it into a HBO show, The Outsider, and that's like about a creature that feeds on fear and moves from family to family and causing trauma and whatever, and then it feeds off that. So the idea of that and the boogeyman of the monster that feeds on it's like that's not new, but I feel like they didn't. It's just like, because the monster is just a monster at the end of the day, he's like a creature that is physically, it makes it less scary. And I know it's a monster movie and they want to defeat the monster at the end, but I was like, it's more scary when there's a thing you can't fight with,
Yeah.
But that's also not what this movie was. This movie is like more of a, I won't call it. I guess it's safe. Like, it's kind of a teen.
It's safe. Yeah. It's
kid, like not a kids movie, but younger teens could watch this movie and be like, oh, scary, and it's not.
It's
really
one that's not going to traumatize anyone watching at home.
Yeah.
Like it has a couple of scares, but it's safe.
Yeah.
It's Disney Plus appropriate. It's like
yeah.
It's no Terrifier.
Yeah, it's no Terrifier. It's no Terrifier.
Now, that's a boogeyman movie that you don't want
hair on your chest.
Well, look, that's all I had for like horror movies. I guess recently I talked about some last week.
We talked about a few last week.
Yeah.
I've got heaps. So Callum, do you wanna?
I watched The Tenant by Roman Polanski. It was fine. It was billed as a horror movie online, so I watched it. I'm like, that's appropriate. But in reality, I guess it could have been considered a horror movie at the time, though not really. It's like a psychological thriller.
I guess, yeah. Sometimes psychological thrillers, they border on the horror movie.
Yeah.
The lines
well, there's
get
no.
blurred.
Yeah.
Well, this one's more of like a paranoid. It's very schizophrenic, very paranoid feeling. You don't know which characters. Like, I don't want to spoil it, but it's this interesting movie because it has an unreliable narrator, but you only realize the narrator's unreliable halfway through.
Okay.
But it's like very claustrophobic because apparently he was going through a phase in his career where he wanted to make movies about like neighbors and
Yeah, he did
city
that
living.
movie Cul-de-sac. That's very contained.
And that Rosemary's Baby or whatever, they form like this loose trilogy of claustrophobic films, like you can't escape your neighbors kind of thing. It was okay. The twist I saw coming because it's in 2023 I've already seen all these movies, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
when did it come out? 70s?
70 something, yeah.
I'll look it up.
I think it's after Chinatown.
Okay.
So it could have even been early 80s.
I don't know.
But anyway, I guess at the time
1976.
oh, there you
Okay.
go. Audiences have, probably could have been pretty shocked by some of the stuff you see.
Maybe.
Some of the interesting editing, you know what I mean? Like it's a good film.
Polanski, not a good man, good filmmaker.
Correct.
That's all we have to say about that.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Good editing. I watched In the Earth, which was a movie I'd never heard of before. I picked it up for $10.
Yeah, you were telling me about it.
A British horror movie. The synopsis on the back says that there's been some global virus outbreak on the Earth, and I'm like, cool, I'm gonna buy it. So give me some of that 21 Days Later stuff, but it's not that at all.
28 days later.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
28 Days Later still kills me because I want to watch it on Blu-ray and the picture quality. I know it's
Because
designed
it was shot
that
on
way.
DV, video.
Because it blows up on the TV.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Still great movie though.
great movie, but it's a bit difficult to watch.
And they said they were going to make a third one, which they've been saying that for a long time,
We'll
but
see.
apparently now it's actually happening.
We'll see.
Um,
As long as Danny Boyle is involved.
As long as that, and it's like not CGI garbage.
you don't need it to be for that franchise, anyway.
Yeah, but everything we always say they don't need it, and then it ends
AI
up.
zombies.
Yeah.
Right into the,
I think
Yeah.
the problem with 28 Days or the 28 series is that the scope is big,
yeah.
and
Especially
it's
in
like,
the second one when the scope gets even bigger.
yeah. And then if they increase the scope again, it's just there's going to
It's
be
gonna
that
be
conversation.
like was that
World War
Brad
Z,
Pitt?
Yeah,
World War Z, yeah.
There's going to be that.
It's just CGI.
There's going to be that conversation where Danny Boyle's like, "I need 10,000 extras, please," and they're going to be like, "No, you just
Yeah.
get one dude and some AI. It'll be fine."
Yeah, copy paste the
Yeah.
one guy
Yeah.
again, like the Hobbit.
So yeah. So In the Earth is about again I say about because the blurb has almost a different story than the movie itself. About these people trying to find a cure for this virus, but the virus is barely mentioned, and you don't know they're looking for a cure until like 3/4 of the way through the film. But the virus isn't name dropped really. It's just these people go looking for someone in a forest in England somewhere, and then mysterious things happen in the forest. Might be to do with like mushrooms, having a sentience and all manner of weird stuff going on. And there's like a murderer in the forest as well. And it's like, again, listed as a horror film. I wouldn't personally label it that. It's more of again, like a psychological thriller. Because there's the, am I being impacted by the drugs of the forest, or is this happening,
For real, yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I enjoyed it, but again, not what it was billed as to me. And yeah, I do want to say, I wouldn't do this on the show. But there's a movie I am going to watch that I'm interested in, which is apparently very good.
A horror movie?
Yeah, a horror movie. I might watch it tonight or tomorrow.
Well, tonight's the night.
Yeah, it's called When Evil Lurks.
Oh,
Was
what?
that the
That's a-
Shudder one you were talking about?
Yeah, it's a brand new one, and it's getting pretty good reviews.
It just came out.
It's an Argentinian horror movie about a town in which a devil might be born, and everyone's trying to leave because like the devil's going to be born in this town or whatever, so they try to escape. But is it too late? And apparently it's kind of gory, kind of scary, kind of interesting. But
I don't think I've heard of it. Did it come out this year?
Yes, it's new.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm going to check that one out. So it should be on Paramount.
If I don't have time to watch it tonight, I'm probably not going to watch it because November I'm going to detox from horror movies. Also, Alan Wake 2 just came out, so November is just playing Alan Wake 2 and watching a couple other movies. But
so you got to detox in time just to watch Christmas movies for December.
That's the thing. November is all Alan Wake, and then December is like, now I have to watch Christmas movies.
Get your Hallmark subscription ready, boys.
Yeah, all those awful.
There's a 600 new.
There's a whole bunch
Netflix
of Peacock, I think.
Romantic comedies. Yeah,
the mum movies.
My princess with Christmas.
We recently were able to get Peacock, and our mum was like, "Oh, the Christmas movies are on here."
Crappy rom-com. Yeah,
but I'm like, well, you're overseas for December, so you can't watch Peacock.
She can watch the BBC version of the crappy Christmas romantic comedies.
But yeah, that's about all I've got. Unfortunately, I haven't got around to. Unfortunately, the stack is a harsh mistress, as you know.
Callum has
just
been...
wait until he gets Zatoichi the Blind Swordsman movies,
and
the James Bond.
You know
26.
You know what though? That's not on the bookcase. Doesn't count.
I'm gonna put it on the bookcase.
Put it on the bookcase. Once it's on there, you can't take
That's
it.
it. And the James Bond films, of course.
Yeah.
But
again, the stack is a harsh mistress. I'm halfway through.
Yeah, but Callum's been going through. He's very religious about going through the Blu-rays on the shelf.
Yeah.
So yeah, but actually, something.
What's on your stack? Let us know.
Yeah,
That's a good question.
yeah.
Do you have a stack? Is it weird to have a stack?
What's your I guess.
What's on your watch list?
What's on your watch list? Yeah, well, everything.
Yeah.
No, but Callum was saying he said the word paranoid before, and it made me just remember something about Scream 5 and 6. Is one thing I like about 5 and 6 is that all the characters are really paranoid, thinking that all their friends are the killer, and they're all like accusing each other and not trusting each other, and they're like, "Where were you?" And they're like, "I'm not going near you," and it's like, "You can't be involved in this because." And I like that. It's like more so than the other Scream movies. It's more of that, like they're playing against each other because they're not sure if one of them is the killer. So yeah, I like that aspect of the new movies. One thing I just remembered as well is one of the reasons I think the first movie is still the best. Not only is that end sequence so crazy, but like when people are bleeding, it's like they're bleeding. And like they start to get woozy and start to slip in their own blood, and there's like blood everywhere. And as the movies go on, even though they're still gory and bloody, even in the 5th and 6th movie, it's just like people get stabbed and there's a bit of blood and then everyone's fine.
That's one thing that I also noted when we were watching it and I disliked to an extent is the fact that it's like getting stabbed in the Scream movies isn't a lethal. It's what happens around you being stabbed. I feel like decides your fate.
I feel like in the original movies, even though people would survive crazy things, there was still like an element of like getting really badly wounded.
Yeah.
Whereas the new movies is just like
people nearly die in Scream 6 and then
just
like
get up
and then
and
like
they're
20
fine.
minutes later they're like, I'm here to save the day.
Yeah, they're just fighting, and it's like I know they're set in this universe where it's just like there is a level of suspension of disbelief where you're like, oh,
but that is a criticism.
Yeah, I feel
valid
like
criticism.
Yeah, I feel like the groundedness of the original, there's no supernatural element, and when they do introduce a certain supernatural element in 5 and 6, I didn't like that. The visions of her father.
Oh yes,
yeah, that's not. It wasn't. I think not
only
only
a psychological reflection.
Yeah, but also it's like it wasn't necessary. Just the
no Force ghosts.
Yeah,
unless you're making a commentary on Star Wars.
Well, the fact that it is a Force Awakens kind of meta commentary, but it's like I'm just kind of like it's not necessary, and so they shouldn't have done it because it's just her relation to that character is enough. They don't need to literally have the Force ghost. It's just embarrassing.
Yeah. All right. What else you got for us, James? What other horror movies you've been watching? Oh, notable horror movies you've been watching.
Everyone, strap yourselves in. Not only did I watch all the Scream movies, but the 4K of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out, and so did the 4K of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. So I had those, and I was like, well, if I'm going to watch those, I might as well just go through the whole Texas Chainsaw series and watch all of them. Because I've
only seen the first two.
This is the time to do it.
No, you watched the Netflix one, didn't you?
I was like, do you count the reboots and the Netflix
all of them.
entry?
All the remakes. I've watched all of them. All 9 movies.
Okay.
In all continuities. So, yeah, the last few days has been crazy because I've just been binging mostly Texas Chainsaw movies and other horror movies. So, the first one...
No wonder you walked in here with that crazy look in your eyes.
The first one's the best.
Yeah. First one, hands down, one of the greatest horror movies of all time.
We watched it. I remember we've told this story before. We watched it together on the projector back in the old ghetto projector.
Ago. Yeah, a few years ago, watching at your place. Yeah. And the first half of the movie is just them making fun of the disabled guy. And we're like, what is the big deal? And then, bam, hits the ground running and screaming. And we were like, oh my God.
That's
and
even
it's
the forest
non-stop.
is still with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
nuts.
just like with the climax of Scream, is like it's just non-stop screaming and crazy people running and killing, and it's just awesome. Yeah, and like with Scream again, everything that's been said about it has been said, so I don't need to go over it. But the 4K, I got the limited edition second sight edition because I had to, which is really nice. Yeah, it's got a nice kind of hard box, and it's got a little hardcover book with essays and stuff.
Comes
in
with a little chainsaw.
No, but it did have art cards. But
what's the picture like of the film? Is it restored?
Yes, and it looks phenomenal because it was shot on 16mm, which obviously doesn't hold as much information as 35.
But 16mm can still do 4K,
yeah,
right?
and is generally just a lot more grainy, which actually helps a movie like Texas Chainsaw. But the restoration work they did was phenomenal. It looks incredible. Like, I cannot, just cannot describe how good they did with that movie. And watching it again, it's just such a good horror movie. Like, it's got to be top 5 horror movies, top 7 horror movies of all time.
Yeah, it would have to be.
It's just like so atmospheric and unsettling.
Yeah.
And the fact that...
It's that hole in the middle of nowhere. It's like you're not safe.
But the fact that, and this has been talked about a lot, this is nothing new, but the fact that there's not actually that much blood or gore, like it's very, very tame.
It's because it terrorizes people because it's so vicious.
The movie isn't about violence or gore, it's about terror.
Yeah, exactly. It's the most terrifying movie, and it's the best use of cinema to be terrifying without just...
Because it doesn't feel safe.
It's a movie that's
dangerous.
It's a movie that's rated R, and it doesn't have that much violence in it.
But that's the thing.
It's so like, dangerous.
It's because just the atmosphere is threatening. There's just everything is threatening, and the whole thing is it's oppressive.
Yeah.
And like the fact that it was shot in Texas, like, and it was extremely hot when they were shooting, and it was super low budget, and you can just tell how just hot and miserable and disgusting everything is. And then it's just, it just builds up, and there's just this tense feeling. And it's got this really weird, unconventional score. Like, it's not just a normal scary movie score. It's these weird industrial sounds. And it's got this... It looks really good for, a low-budget movie shot on 16mm. I think it was Tobe Hooper's first movie. It looks really good, too. Cinematography is fantastic. And then once, Leatherface kills that guy, he hits him on the head, and he's just convulsing, and then he slams that. And there's no jump scare sound. There's no sting, musical sting or sound effect. About.
Like, the violence is minimal. Like, he gets hit on the head with a hammer, right?
And he drops.
But it's like that kind of violence happens sometimes in slapstick movies. Like, haha. He gets hit and then he drops.
There's no blood. But he's convulsing.
But convulsing's horrific.
And then Leatherface, the image of Leatherface is terrifying.
Awful,
But it's not like they do a close up and go, like, there's no... It's not trying to scare you in a sort of a manufactured way, artificial way. And then he slams that metal door, and I remember seeing it for the first time, just going like putting my hand
Yeah,
in
I
my head,
remember,
going
yeah.
like, what the.
Yeah.
And from there, it's just non-stop.
Yeah.
And he like puts the girl on the hook and she's screaming and he's cutting the guy's head off. And you don't actually see him cut off the guy's
Yeah.
head. But the fact that she's hanging on the meat hook and he's
Yeah.
like, there's this guy in this weird skin mask like sawing off this guy's head. Even though you don't see anything, it's just terrifying.
Yeah.
And it just keeps going. And then like Callum was saying, like he's chasing Sally and her brother like through the...
Yeah. He's like a hulking presence.
And there's all the
foliage.
The branches scratching, and they're really scratching it because they were just running around in the middle of the night in Texas doing that, and it just keeps going and going, and
yuck.
and then the
and
dinner,
he's like hulking presence.
Yeah.
behind
Yeah,
her.
and
he's so
he's
much
just-
bigger than
yeah.
her in the frame. Yeah.
and then
making my skin
the
crawl
dinner,
just talking
the
about it.
dinner sequence, which is one of the most legendary sequences of all time. Again, not really any blood or gore, like it's just.
It's
Shot,
obscene, James. That's what it is.
It's shot, and it's shot in such an
With the grandfather?
yeah.
It's obscene.
It's shot in such a like experimental way, and it's edited in such a.
No, imagine
The editing is violent.
Yeah, imagine
Yeah.
being on the Mothers Association for this film.
Oh man, it's just
This is one of those movies where they walk in, they watch a movie, and then their just response is, "Y'all need Jesus."
yeah.
it gets a not
it's a
rated
movie-
because you need Jesus.
It's a movie that's like you need to take a shower after watching it, because even though it's a great movie, you're like, I just watched a snuff movie.
Yeah,
And even though there's like no real graphic
No, yeah.
violence, you're like, I just watched people get murdered for real.
I
Yeah.
feel like it's like if I smoked, I would need a cigarette.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to relax.
No, on the other
calm down,
hand,
yeah.
you also watched 2 for the first time.
So what? So okay. So the first one came out in 1974, and it instantly became an
Classic,
iconic. Leatherface became an iconic slasher villain, horror villain. The movie was super well known.
Changed the world.
Yeah, and it changed the slasher genre and the American horror landscape. Then, like 13 years goes by, and finally Tobe Hooper, the director of the original, he makes a second one, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which came out in 1986. And he decided to, because like Callum was saying, the kind of the dinner sequence in the first movie, it's, what word did you use? Not absurd.
Obscene.
Obscene, yeah.
Yeah.
It's absurd. It's obscene, but it's also absurd. Like
Yeah.
it's so crazy and over the top, but it's so terrifying and there is a dark humor to it.
Yeah.
But at no point are you
Laughing.
or
Yeah,
even
the
smiling.
blackest of black.
Yeah, you're
humor,
like, this
yeah.
is so insane that it's a bit funny, but I'm really scared and I'm not
Yeah.
laughing.
The oppressiveness will not let you laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost the humor makes it more oppressive.
Am I supposed to be laughing at
Yeah,
what's on
it's
the
just
screen?
like, is this silly? Oh my God, what are they doing? Yeah. So flash forward to the 80s, and Tobe Hooper was like, no one appreciated the black humor in the first one. I'm just going to make a black comedy as the sequel.
Yeah.
And I don't think he even understood his...
Can I just say though, the gift that movie brings the world for me will always be the
chainsaw
holding
battle?
the chainsaw over the head. No. When he does this,
Oh, yeah.
with it's hilarious.
Yeah,
it's such
yeah.
a physical comedy moment from Leatherface. You know,
So,
the king of physical comedy.
The second... Yeah, so the second one, like, it's more just straight goofy. Like,
So it's a Deathstalker to Deathstalker 2 situation? Because I've never seen the second one.
Almost. It's more... Yeah, it's just like...
Let me put it this way: one of the subplots of the film is what's the family surname?
Hardesty.
They win a chili competition, but they're not
Oh,
going
you
to tell
mean the evil family?
Yeah,
the Sawyers.
the Sawyers. Yeah, but they're not going to tell people what's in the chili, Nathan.
Yeah, it's all about the meat.
Yeah, but
So, yeah, the second movie, even though it takes place after all this time, like the family is all back, and even the hitchhiker who got killed in the first movie, now he's gone, but now he's apparently got a brother or something now who's called Chop Top, and it's just like, it's more cartoonish.
yeah.
They've got it's not a big budget movie, but it seems to be a bit bigger budget and more polished than the original was, and it loses all of the horror and atmosphere of the first one,
Yeah.
And I've always heard about this movie. Oh, the second one's really silly, but Toby Hooper, he deliberately made a comedy, whatever. It's still funny. Dennis Hopper's in it, who we love. And it's like, I felt like I would even enjoy it because I like crazy, dumb, silly movies. And even though it's nothing like the first one, I was like, oh, I'm going to enjoy this. And I bought the 4K that came out. And I was really disappointed because it's mostly just boring, which I was really surprised. And also, it's not funny or crazy enough for an audience member to be like, oh, wow, this is so crazy. Ha, ha, ha. Isn't this dumb?
Yeah.
Even the chainsaw battle at the climax is weighed down by the rest of the stuff going on in the scene.
Yeah, and it's not really nothing. There are moments played for laughs, but there's nothing so crazy or...
Yeah.
I guess maybe there were moments where they thought was really funny, but I'm watching it and just not even cracking a smile. Yeah, crickets. And I just thought mainly it's just boring. Like Dennis Hopper's character, Dennis Hopper's phoning it in, and his character like disappears for a long time, it was just, I was just kind of like, I wasn't baffled by the comedic aspect. I was just baffled at how I expected it to be more crazy and more like over the top.
It loses a lot of what made the original great, obviously.
Yeah, it loses everything that made the original great. And then it's like, oh, we're going to make a dumb comedy, but also it's not really that fun or funny. And there's a lot of just boring, dull moments.
That's disappointing.
And the climactic kind of end fight with the chainsaw fight is like, it's not that great.
Yeah.
So I was disappointed, and then I was just kind of like, well, might as well watch all the other ones. I know they're going to be terrible.
How bad can it get?
So then there was Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, which came out in 1990.
Maybe hold that thought. We'll go to a very quick break before we come back and wade into some murky waters. We'll be back right after this. You are back on the Tuesday review for our Spooktacular episode, Halloween special.
Yes.
James is regaling us with tales of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series. You know, he's taken a bullet for us. So we don't have to go back and watch some of these more.
Who's that YouTube reviewer? I watch it so you don't have to.
Yeah.
Is it Nostalgia Critic?
Something like
that.
It's
one of those guys. Yeah. It's like, I'll watch it so you don't have to.
Yeah.
So after Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 comes out, even though there was this huge gap between the first one and the second one, now this kind of revitalizes, you know, Leatherface and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. And now they start slightly more consistently putting movies out. So the next one is Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, which came out in 1990. And this one's like a real kind of low budget, sort of again, like we were talking about before with Scream, most horror movies is just like the same movie over and over again. Again, like they kind of just remake 2 with elements of the first one, you know, except now it's a different family, but Leatherface is still there. And it's like, well, it doesn't really make sense, but it's kind of interesting because you're like, oh, it's just like he's with a different family every movie, and it's like the continuity doesn't matter. It's just a slasher movie. It's just fun to see
every family has one of those boys.
It's just fun to see him murder people with a chainsaw. Like, it's not about the characters or the continuity. So, and this one's interesting because it's got a young sort of earlier performance from Viggo Mortensen.
Oh wow!
And he's one of the crazy family members. He's great. He's fun to watch. And it's also interesting because like they add like an old woman sort of matriarch to the crazy family, and a little girl, like crazy cannibal, like this crazy cannibal family. So it's not just copying the first and second movie's family again.
Yeah.
Which I think in one way is interesting because it's just like
different dynamic.
It's like movie, it's a crazy family again, but they're not using the same. Yeah. And it's like like I said, the continuity doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's nothing special. Like, has a couple of fun moments. But it just after the first one they lose that terrifying kind of oppressive
they get
film. The filmmaking is just not as good.
I think people get caught up in the kills aspect of it, right? I think with slashers,
it's the same with like Halloween. The original Halloween's not that bloody or gory.
No, I would say
it's about atmosphere and tension. And as the movies go on, there's like more gore and more about the kills.
Yeah, the zeitgeist of the horror slasher kind of killer movies definitely became about the body counts and the kills.
Yeah.
When, as you said, Halloween, it's not really about that. The first movie, and it's the same with the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You don't really see the kills. It's not really about that as aspect of it.
Every subsequent movie, they have to up the body count.
So it just becomes they lose and what's
like Friday the 13th,
special about the first.
Friday the 13th, like Jason has to get more crazy, more powerful, and more
exactly.
So so the third one is like definitely like, okay, now they're just generic slasher movies that they're churning out. One thing I don't like about 2 and 3 is that Leatherface doesn't act like Leatherface. Leatherface in the original movie, and one of the reasons he's terrifying, is that he's a child, like in a man's body, like
with some anger issues.
Yeah, like he is mentally, disabled or whatever.
The whole thing is, he's got a family of kind of cannibals with suspicious relationships. Yeah, and kind of
he's from this awful family that abuses him. He's also like has the mental capacity of a child, but he has this giant frame. He's this big guy, strong guy.
And he knows how to work a chainsaw.
Yeah, and what's terrifying is that when people come into his house, he's scared, and so he kills them. Yeah. And he's also, I guess, the one in the family who prepares the meat, because he's like puts them straight in the freezer and's like cutting them up. He's like, this is what, like, he's not going out and killing people like Jason Voorhees or whatever. Like, he's not that. Whereas 2, they start to make him more of an actual killer going out with his brother. And by the third one, he's just more aggressive. He's actual killer. Third one's dumb fun. It's cheap, but it's not really worth watching. Now, the fourth one, 1995, The Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a.k.a. the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation.
Ah, that's what I know it by. Yeah.
So this movie comes out in 95, so 5 years later again. And again, it's basically like a remake of 2 and 3. It's like a different family again, different characters again, but Leatherface is there now again still. And, they become more generic slasher movies. Now this one has a 3.3 rating out of 10 rating on IMDb. It's got to be one of the lowest ratings.
Does it deserve that low rating?
I enjoyed this more than 2 and 3. And that is insane because it's not good, but I'm watching it. The first half is garbage. The first half of the fourth movie is just like nothing going on. It's the typical teenagers get lost in the woods and they're wandering around and it's so boring.
Yeah.
Then
you see that? That's funny.
Then shit hits the fan and it starts to get crazy and crazier.
It has Matthew McConaughey in it.
One of the reasons it's so fun to watch.
Renee Zellweger.
Yes, is that Renee Zellweger is the final girl before she was famous, and Matthew McConaughey is one of the crazy family members.
All right.
Yeah, before he was famous. So it's kind of like it's so fun to watch Matthew McConaughey just turning it up to 11, chewing scenery in every scene, just you can tell he's like doing, like going for it. And it's weird and it's dumb and it doesn't make sense. And there's like this weird, Matthew McConaughey's character has this weird leg brace thing that's like electronically activate. And it's just like so dumb and unnecessary.
Amazing.
And again, they tried to recreate aspects from the previous movies, like the dinner scene and so on. And none of it works, and it's kind of cheap and low budget, but it's just so crazy and ambitious. And then there's this whole kind of, I wouldn't call it a subplot, there's this other thing of like, there's a sort of secret society that is potentially funding this family because they want to cause chaos and pain. And I'm like, what the hell is this? This is insane.
I think I need to rewatch this series.
Yeah. And then it's not good.
Yeah.
Also, what I like about this one, though, is Leatherface acts like Leatherface again in this one. They kind of realize that he's like sort of he's like kind of afraid, and his family abuses him. And so yeah, that I like that they brought that aspect back to it. But it's just so weird. It's just such a weird movie that I kind of enjoyed it more than the 2 and 3, just because I was like scratching my head, being like, what are they doing? Why are they doing this? And I kind of liked aspects of it for that. It's not good.
Yeah.
But I was kind of like, oh, it's just so
It's
crazy.
Yeah.
So then that kind of kills the franchise for a bit. Then in 2003, they remake the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So there's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. I don't remember, but I think I might have seen this when I was younger.
I certainly have.
It came out in 2003, which was like prime, like I was like 12, and it's like, it's the perfect time for like, you start hearing about horror movies, you start watching horror movies. You know, you go to Blockbuster and you see the scary cover, and your parents have to be there to rent it for you because you're not allowed to watch it because the ratings do it, whatever. And kids at school start telling you about all these crazy horror movies. So I think I may have seen it when I was younger, but I don't remember it well enough to say if I saw the whole thing. Maybe I only saw part of it. I rewatched this one, and automatically when it started, I do remember the aspect of, because there's this kind of found footage aspect at the beginning of like police tape. Not police.
I remember.
Police footage.
I know it.
And I remember a kid in school telling me that it was based on a true story. So
that's been a Texas Chainsaw Massacre thing. The whole
which they do in the first movie with the opening scroll, and they do in the other movies. But this is, I remember. Then it like came to me. I was like, when I was in primary school,
sleep for a week.
When I was in primary school, I was like, it's actually based on a true story because the police has footage of it, and there's like, and it's like, obviously it's not, and they put that in the movie. It's all fake. But I remember
I do that to scare the kids.
Yeah, and I remember watching that scene. I'm like, oh, cool, you know. Good times. grade 6. But the remake is fine. It's a much more conventional horror movie than the original. You know, it's not as well shot. It's not as oppressive in its atmosphere or scary. The score is a more conventional horror movie. It's got a more conventional sort of, you know, slasher kind of progression. But it's enjoyable. And I think one of the reasons it's enjoyable is it's not a straight shot-for-shot remake of the original, so that's good. Ali Ermey as the sort of patriarch of the crazy family, he's really great. He's really fun to watch chew scenery. And there's some good sort of horror moments. But it does have that early 2000s kind of quick cut, kind of too many close-ups, and kind of like they're trying to be too energetic, and it loses a lot of the horror. And the score isn't great, and it's kind of grey and dull looking. And
it is.
But I enjoyed it. It's like, it's not an awful movie. Then they made a prequel to that one because of the way it ends. They're like, I don't know if we can do a sequel. So they had to do a prequel, which is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning, which came out in 2006. Is that the one that starts at
the meat factory?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this takes place a few years before the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, and shows kind of how the family kind of started becoming cannibals, and Leatherface became Leatherface. And like all prequels, it's unnecessary, as clearly it was just a cash grab so they could keep the rights and make a few more bucks. It's not awful, but it's just like, the remake is more enjoyable, and this one is just like more of the same, except they're like, this is how Leatherface made his skin mask kind of thing.
He suits up like Ali G.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny because it's like you see where he gets the chainsaw from. It's like, okay, thank you, Han, just Solo the Star Wars story. Like, oh, you have to show how and you show how they started eating people. It's like, no. What's scary about the first one is like these people are just crazy, and they've been like this forever. Like, and Leatherface grew up like
kind of
this,
that whole Appalachian kind of like mountain men, remote
but
living,
turned up to it's
crazy
like extreme.
people, they have their own little weird traditions, and they keep themselves.
So then that movie came out. I assume it didn't do super well or whatever, because then they didn't make another one until Texas Chainsaw 3D in 2013. Now this movie is pretty rough. It's pretty,
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Now,
was any movie called 3D?
Was this filmed in 3D?
Yeah.
Okay, now, did you do this movie justice by getting your 3D glasses out and watching it on a 3D
Of course
playable?
not. No one has a 3D player or a 3D TV anymore.
what
We had
watching-
a 3D TV at one point, but so you don't appreciate the chainsaw coming out of the screen?
And those moments, there's like 2 of those moments, and the rest of the movie, it's like just normal.
We went to the cinemas not that long ago and saw a movie that was in 3D. Was it a
A
Marvel
Marvel
movie?
movie. It
And
was
it was-
because
Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm
we
just
were
like the
what?
whole time I'm like something feels off about
Yeah,
this
'cause it
movie,
was
and
like
it turns out it was
rotoscoped or
made
whatever.
it was rotoscope for 3D for the Chinese market or something.
I
It's
don't know.
too
We were
big
confused because they
there.
don't play
Yeah.
movies in 3D anymore, and we were like, there must be an Asian market where they
I think
still
there's
do
a
them.
massive 3D market in. I think it was for China. If I remember correctly, it was like made that they put the 3D in for the Chinese market.
I don't remember. Yeah.
So the whole movie looks weird on
Yeah.
2D screens.
But it's like
good
you
times.
you watch like Friday the 13th Part 3, I think it was, which is like the 3D one where there's like stuff coming out of the screen, and because it's like a early 80s movie or whatever, it's just like it's practical, and this movie is a low budget 2013. I'm not sure if it even got a theatrical. It must have got a theatrical release if it was 3D, but it feels very straight to DVD.
Yeah.
It feels very low budget, and I'm like watching it and being like, man, it looks so bad, like they shot it on a camcorder. And then I realized one of the reasons it does look so bad is because they were shooting it for 3D, so everything's brightly lit and it looks kind of soap opera.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm like, oh, they did themselves a disservice by putting in the 3D gimmick.
Because that would have been right on time for the 3D kind of
Boom.
Yeah.
boom. 'Cause
Yeah, and they were trying to cash in on it.
So
And
around the years around Avatar and
They probably
even
got-
the Avengers came out in 3D.
they probably got the rights to this, and they were like, I think it's just a small studio, like it's not a big budget
Yeah.
thing, and you can tell it's very rough. And they're doing a thing where they ignore all the other sequels, they ignore the remakes, and it's like it's technically a sequel to the first movie.
Yeah, okay.
But it's so low budget that they can't really recreate the 70s well enough. But there are flashback scenes where people are wearing bad wigs and, have all these like fake guns. And it's like very, it's kind of, but then there are a couple of moments where it's like, oh, that's cool. Like there's a bit where the character's trying to get away in their van and Leatherface is trying to cut up the side of their van and he pops one of the tires with the chainsaw and the chainsaw kind of gets stuck in the tire and it flips his chainsaw away and the van keeps accelerating forward and then flips on its side. And I'm like, that was pretty good for, I'm assuming, low budget.
Yeah.
Again, same with the remake and now this movie, like Leatherface now is just a full-on killer again. And yeah,
I think the problem is you have to be careful, especially moving into modern standards, of being like Leatherface does this because he's mentally disabled or he has other mental issues.
Well,
and it's the kind of
but
dance around
but
what is kind of right in modern society.
But I don't think anyone would watch Texas Chainsaw and go, "Oh, this is an awful treatment of mentally ill people." Like,
no, but it's kind of that thing of like it's a man who has intellectual disabilities.
Yeah,
and
if anything,
he kills people when he's a bit frightened.
If anything, it
doesn't hold up.
It makes it more scary because it's like he was a vulnerable person.
Yeah.
Who. Is
No,
treated awfully, and so
I can see why they move in
But
a certain
this-
direction instead of doubling down.
But
on
I
certain
don't think they're
things.
doing it they're doing it because, like we were talking about with Scream, is like you get an idea of what it is, and so everyone thinks of Leatherface and they think of, oh, he's this series' version of Jason Voorhees who goes around killing teens, like, and they think he's just the slasher villain, he's the Freddy Krueger, whatever, like.
Whereas most people who watch this franchise probably don't look at it as deeply.
And that's the thing. A lot of people probably didn't even care. Like they're just like Leatherface has the mask and the chainsaw, and we want to see him kill. And whereas I'm kind of like, no, I like the original is still the best for a reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, 3D is not good, and they also do this weird thing where they're trying to they do this backstory where they're trying to make Leatherface sympathetic. And his family, they're cannibals sympathetic.
Like the Rob Zombie Halloween treatment?
Yeah, and I
How
was just
and
like,
why?
yeah, and I was like, what? And it ends really strangely where...
They're cannibals because the society failed them.
Pretty much, yeah. It's just like the society failed and like all the townspeople...
They cut off my food stamps. What else was I meant to do?
Yeah, all the townspeople are more awful than the crazy cannibals. And I'm like, what are they trying to say here? And yeah, it's not very good.
You know his name, not his story.
Yeah. So then they made a prequel to this one.
Oh, jeez.
called Leatherface.
Maybe I don't need to watch this.
No. And this came out in 2017. And so this takes place before the original movie, but in the same continuity as Texas Chainsaw 3D, which is the sequel to the original.
Yeah.
So now we're back in like the 1950s or 1960s when Leatherface is young, and it's like his origin story.
Yeah.
And again, it's like low budget, could have been straight to DVD, I don't even know. Has some cool ideas, but is generally just not good. And they try to make all the characters sympathetic, and I'm like, what are they doing? And yeah, it's just with all these movies, except for the first one, like they just try to up the gore. You know, more blood, more guts, more kind of disgusting stuff. And you know, at this point, you know, it's like young Leatherface and just blood, and it's just like, who cares? Like, why are what are you doing here?
Yeah.
And then that leads us to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022.
The Netflix film.
Yes, which was released straight to Netflix.
I did see this one.
Which is also funny because as we were just talking about with Scream 2022, which came out the same year, it's like it's part of this trend of, especially horror movies, reboot-calls of like just using the original name.
Yeah.
And no number, no subtitle.
But also, this is like a sequel to the first one.
Now,
right?
This ignores all the other movies again, and is now
one,
just another sequel to the original. It doesn't make sense because it's like 40, 50 years later, and you know, Leatherface has been living in an orphanage with an old lady who's not in the first movie, and it's just like, what is going on? And again, Leatherface in this one is just straight up killer, and it, like Halloween 2018, which a lot of people like, but I didn't like. It's like it doesn't make a lot of sense when you try to fit it in with the original, especially how much time has gone by, and then you've got a bunch of new young characters come in to get killed, and then you bring in a legacy character, which, you know, Scream is making fun of, but they can get away with it because it's meta. Whereas this one, it's a very roll your eyes, kind of like they're doing the bad thing that Scream is pointing fun at, making fun of. It wasn't awful, but it's not good.
It has some nice cinematography.
I think mostly it looked like garbage, but there are a couple of moments, like there's the sunflower
That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Some good kills.
Yeah, but again, it's like, what are we doing here? And there's a whole bunch of like Gen Z kind of
the whole they come to buy the town and
and like you know, try anything and you get cancelled, bro. And like I was just, and like the bit where he's chainsawing all the people on the bus, it could have been an amazing sequence, but instead it looks like garbage, sounds like garbage. There's CGI blood everywhere. It's just boring and ugly, and I was just kind of, and it's really short too. It's like an hour and 23 minutes. It's one of the shortest out of all these awful Texas Chainsaw movies. It's surprisingly one of the shortest ones, and still I think it overstays its welcome. It also has this really weird kind of character point where the main character survived a school shooting, and like now she's traumatized and she has to fight back, but she has to use a gun, but she can't. And I'm just like, who's writing this? Who thought this was a good idea?
Millennials.
We're
No, other millennials, not us.
Oh yeah, idiot millennials.
Yeah.
To be fair, we're on the older side of the millennials.
Actually, no, you're right.
Younger millennials.
Technically, we're not. We're like in the middle.
Yeah,
we're in the middle.
Yeah, but these younger millennials.
Who's writing this? Older Gen Z.
Yeah.
Probably.
I reckon it was Gen X who made this movie.
Because they miss all the point,
Yeah, because they're trying to be like Gen Z millennial cool, but then they miss all the point.
Yeah.
I think it's also just a product of like the Netflix machine of like, we have the rights to this, let's churn it out and let's make a reboot cool because people don't like the sequels and everyone loves the original.
I think you're right.
And we have to replicate the success of Halloween 2018. And
I think you're right.
Yeah. Also, again, they missed the point and the filmmaking is just not as strong. But also, having watched all these movies, I think everyone has a little aspect of it that I like, even the really bad ones. I'm kind of like, oh, that's an interesting idea. Oh, that's a cool kind of bit. One thing I will say, though, is the first movie, even though it's the lowest budget, it's still the best. But also still has the best Leatherface mask.
Yeah.
The mask in the original actually looks like he's skinned someone and then has like sewn it like as a mask on his face. All the other movies, some of them look okay, some of them have cool designs, but they look kind of rubbery, and it's like, this is supposed to be a scary mask.
Yeah.
And they look like a mask and not like this
not like a face
weird
on a face.
this weird guy like
Yeah, they look like they're prepared at a Halloween store.
Yeah.
Yeah, not just some dude sewing himself at home.
Like Tom Savini does the effects for Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and it has some great kind of classic Tom Savini effects, some of which are cut down or cut out in a way where it harms the film, whereas it would have been, again, which is why I was disappointed in it. But his mask is kind of cool because you can tell it's more than one face stitched together.
Yeah.
But it looks like a Tom Savini designed mask. Like you can tell he designed it and then molded it and put it in rubber, and like the first one is still the best.
Rawest.
So yeah, I watched all those movies, so you didn't have to. If you haven't seen all the Scream movies, watch them all. If you haven't seen all the Texas Chainsaw movies, just watch the first one. Don't have to watch any of the other ones unless you're a hardcore like horror nerd.
Yeah.
And you really want to put yourself through that. The most horrific thing is putting yourself through watching each movie.
That's the scariest
That's the scariest part of it. Well, we went 2 hours and I've got all these other movies, but maybe we can end it there. I don't know.
Yeah, I reckon we could do another part later on.
I don't really know. Like, I did start a Letterboxd account, so if people want to follow that, they can see what I've been watching. I don't really review, or I just I don't put star ratings even. I just come on to catalog what I watch.
Yeah.
If people follow that, I guess you just search for mine as Channel Drifter. So I guess if they just search for that, they can follow me. I don't know how Letterboxd works.
You can also follow Scorsese on there.
Yeah, he's on there now.
Yeah, his daughter's doing the Lord's work.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess if you follow me there and you see a movie that I see that I don't talk about on the show, I guess you can just hit us up on the social media, and because I've got a lot of other great horror movies that I watched that could do a whole nother show just on them. Real quickly, I did watch Motel Hell, which has a better chainsaw fight at the end than Texas Chainsaw 2.
Oh, cool.
So I'll just say
Very
that.
good. What's that Nicolas Cage movie where there's a really good chainsaw fight? Mandy?
Mandy.
That's
Yeah, that movie's crazy. That chainsaw's crazy.
All right, I reckon we'll end up there. A little bit of housekeeping before we wrap up. We have joined a new social media service called Newsmast.
Mm-hmm.
It's only been around a couple months at this point. It's not too big.
Is it invite only?
No, it's not. We got an invite to join it, but you can join it at home.
Okay, so listeners
can join it and follow us on Newsmast, which is kind of like Reddit meets Twitter in a way. You'll join and you'll pick communities to join. So if you join the movie community, you'll see posts related to movies or users that post to the movie community.
And we'll be in the movie community.
And then once you're in your community, it sort of looks like Twitter, essentially. You can repost, retweet, comment, all that kind of stuff. Join us on Newsmast at Tuesday Review AU.
Mm-hmm.
That should send you to our page, but because it's new, I'm not exactly sure how it works.
Still new,
another user
there's
experience. But the full, I guess our full @ is at Tuesday Review AU at newsmast.social. But I think at Tuesday Review AU will still work as
it should be able to find that.
That's our profile name anyway.
Yeah.
So I guess follow us there. We'll see.
Yeah, if you
start
if you
at the
want to
bottom.
early adopt Newsmasts.
Yeah, it's a to be specific, Newsmast is a knowledge-based social media platform powered by a charitable foundation, non-profit and ad-free, diverse, democratic, and dedicated to building safe, committed communities that can change the world. So it's an app built around communities that support the subjects that matter to you, where contributors are front and center, sharing knowledge and expertise with curious people. So again, it's up our alley.
Anything to get away from Twitter, even though Twitter seems to be the most popular, or one of the still popular place.
Again, you know what? Unfortunately, trying to grow a show, you have to be where the people are, and Twitter seems to be where a lot of people are. And if we can stay positive on Twitter and engage positively,
but we're also diversifying into other territories
course.
Because we want to kind of grow, and so
we're hoping to get some more help with our social media through Alum being a bigger part of the show in terms of kind of managing more of our social media, because it's getting too much for just me and James.
Yeah. And like we were saying the last couple of weeks, is like
there's so much
YouTube stuff that we still haven't been able to.
Again, YouTube's coming up. We got some crazy stuff coming up. If we can arrange it all right. Interviews scheduled, interviews unscheduled. That will potentially blow up the corner of the internet with it at one point.
Yeah,
you'll know what we're talking about when it happens.
Yeah.
But there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Please like and share the Tuesday Review Facebook page, Instagram page, Twitter page, Threads page, and the Newsmast page.
Yeah.
And if soon enough, the YouTube page.
Yeah, all of them are at Tuesday Review AU, so check us out there, follow us there, and make sure you comment and DM us. And
look, we'll be real on the show right now. You know, we've been doing well with our social media, and we've been getting lots of views and impressions, and so people are seeing the show. But we feel like we have no interaction with our listeners. We want to hear from them.
And we've talked about before, it's like that's kind of our fault. We were never that active. But now we're trying to be more active. So if you're on there and you have something you want us to talk about, or you want to comment on something we said on the show.
Because, we don't like just being an echo chamber.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Screaming into the ether.
Yeah, that's it. Someone has to. All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll be back next week.
Oh, make sure to listen to next week's episode. It's going to be very special.
Every week's very special.
Well, yeah. We're very special boys.
That's it. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll be back next week. Adios.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Woo!